Welcome to Kicking It Local, the podcast all about the football community in South Australia. I'm your host, Johnny Kecko, and before we head into today's episode, I'd like to give you a quick warning that it does contain content that may be triggering to some listeners. Please remember, help is available. Speak with someone today or contact a suicide support service in your region. For a more detailed description and the exact timing of this content, please refer to this episode's show notes. And today's episode, I'm excited to be joined by a WNPL senior footballer at Salisbury Inter, Nicole Calder. Thank you for joining me, Nicole.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's looking forward to chatting to you. You've had a great career. You've won a treble at Salisbury Inter. You've been over to the US and you've played for the Young Matildas. There's a lot to talk about, especially in your personal life as well. You're a public speaker.
Well, I try to be.
But I'm looking forward to chatting about your career as well. Where did it all start for you? Because you did play Young Matildas. How did it all start to get to that point?
So I think I was probably 8 years old and I was watching my brothers. I have twin brothers. I was watching them play soccer and I thought, I really want to play soccer. So then I started at Bacala when I was 8 years old in a boys team. Played there for, I think, 3 seasons before moving to Cumberland in the U15s. Did that for up until I left for America in 2011. And whilst I was at Cumberland, I was involved in SASI as a scholarship holder back when SASI existed. And during that time, also got to be involved in Junior Matildas, Young Matildas, going away with the likes of Sam Kerr, Emily Van Egmond.
Jeez.
Not to name drop, but going to name drop.
You can name drop there. You have to name drop there. I want to talk about that. But first of all, I want to talk about the part where you play with the boys. Mm-hmm. Now we don't have as much of that. There's a lot more female teams out there, girl teams for many clubs, and there's also female clubs, female-only clubs in South Australia. But how would you say there's some positives and negatives in regards to that for starting your career?
Definitely. I think starting out playing in boys, you can't be timid. So you have to go out there and you sort of have to be a boy in that sense. And you have to be pretty aggressive and rough. And it teaches you things that you might not get taught in the women's game. And I think that's similar in the sense that when you're always playing in your age group too, sometimes you don't necessarily get to learn the tactical skills that you might if you were playing with players older than you. So I think one of the perks of being involved in the SASI program, you know, I remember I was a 14-year-old kid and there was the likes of Vic Ballaminos, who was 20 years old, I think, at the time. And she was so scary and intimidating, and you made a mistake and she let you know about it. But, you know, you were out there and you felt like you had to prove yourself to be involved in this program and to show your worth, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. And I think you're then also forced to learn the tactical game a lot quicker than sometimes when you're playing in your age group around people of similar ability.
Would you say it will hurt the game not having that players come through that way, or is it going to be benefit in the long run?
Hard to say. I obviously have a bias towards the SASI program because that's how I was brought up. And, you know, you only had, I think, well, it was maybe 8 people that were on full scholarships at the time because that's how much funding we had, sort of thing. Whereas now, obviously, with NTC, you've got so many more players coming through, which I think is fantastic because then you've got a larger pool to choose from when it comes to WNPL, when it comes to junior Young Matildas, and ultimately the Matildas too. So I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. But I do think sometimes playing with older players can help you develop your game quicker in the tactical sense, but sometimes your technical game might suffer because of that.
Now, the Young Matildas, what was that experience like playing with someone like Sam Kerr? Was she just as great to watch and play with back then?
Definitely. I think there were probably 4 or 5 players at that age group where you knew they were a level above everyone else. And those are the players that are still playing for the Matildas now. Having said that, the time the Junior Matildas and Young Matildas was actually quite a daunting experience. You know, you'd leave on a Thursday, you're training Thursday night, training Friday morning, game Friday night, training Saturday morning, game Saturday night. Like, it was very intense. Then you fly back Sunday. And also it was just a really intimidating sort of experience where you don't have anyone else sometimes from your state. You're the only person going over there as, you know, a 14, 15-year-old. You're going through puberty, you've got awkward body things going on. And sometimes when you're in a very competitive environment, it's not, might not be, or it's not always the best environment.
What did you try to do to cope with that situation?
tried to befriend some people, probably people that were maybe not quite as good or were from different states as well. So, from the likes of if you had players from Perth, or if you had players from, I know there were a lot of Melbourne players that were really open to sort of those friendships and whatever else. And to be honest, I spent most of my time in my room studying, so that's how I avoided that.
Well, did you ever, once you got that opportunity to play with them, did you ever see that there was did you ever try and chase that dream to play professionally?
In 2009, I think it was, I was pretty close to going away with the World Cup qualifiers, but then I got glandular fever, I think 6 weeks before we were supposed to head away. So I missed that opportunity. And then the following year, in 2010, I think it was, there wasn't any funding for Australian camps. And so that was the year, I was in year 12 at the time, and I decided that I would go to America instead, and try and play in the college system over there. It was something that my parents encouraged that I do, purely because they thought that it would be an experience that I wouldn't get anywhere else. Yeah. It's an opportunity to get your education paid for. And, I was motivated by not wanting to regret not doing things. And so I thought, well, what's the worst that can happen? I can go to America for a year. If I hate it, I can come home.
Yep.
But if I don't go, in 5 years' time, I might be like, oh man, I really should have gone to America.
How'd you find the experience moving there? You were only 18 at the time?
Yeah, so I just turned 18. So I just became of age in Australia and then moved to America where the drinking age was 21. Not that I ever really drank that much, so it's not a big deal. But moving over to another country is just a completely different experience, You go from living with your parents doing absolutely everything for you, to then living in a country where you have to cook for yourself, you have to clean for yourself, you have to learn how to put the washing on yourself. All of these things that, we take for granted because our parents probably do that for us. Yep. But it was so liberating too, because I could be completely who I wanted to be while I was over there. I could go out in the middle of the night and I didn't have to tell anyone where I was going or who I was seeing or when I'd be home. And so there was the freedom that came with that, which I think really helped in me figuring out more of who I was and what I believed in and whatnot. And the college experience in itself is just so professional. I think it's the Title IX ruling that they have to spend the same amount on women's sports as they do men's sports. And so, any Division 1 sporting team gets sort of the same facilities as the men, which is just, it's insane. We had the biggest women's soccer stadium in the world was where we actually got to train and play in, which is insane. We had our own locker, we had our own training room, ice baths, everything that you could possibly want was there. It was pretty good.
How did you find having that professional setup there affect your game? Was it in a good way?
Definitely. I think when you're exposed to, those sorts of facilities, that can only better your performance. And, the college schedule is pretty intense. You end up doing 2 weeks of preseason, which doesn't seem like a lot, but you're doing 2 to 3 sessions a day. And then after that, you're straight into your season of, I think it's 2.5 months where you're playing 20 games. And so you're playing 2 games every single week. You're training almost every day. Mondays were your only day off, and quite often you're doing 2 sessions a day. And, when I think about the fact that I did that back when I was 18, 19, 2021, I was like, how did my body get through that? I think about, we play a WNPL game here and I need at least 5 days recovery. But when you have access to those facilities and you've got trainers, strength and conditioning coaches and everything that are mindful of your loading and whatnot, and you can get a rub down from the trainers at any time that you want, basically, it can only extend your sort of playing career.
Now, with the scholarship over there came with you got a college degree as well. What made you go for psychology?
I don't know. I've always been fascinated with human behavior. As a kid, I always enjoyed talking to older people and talking about problems, not necessarily because I wanted to help them, but because I wanted to listen to their story. And when I studied psychology, it wasn't necessarily because I wanted to become a psychologist. I've never actually wanted to become a psychologist. I just wanted to understand people better. Yep. Because I think that until we understand people, then we can't really connect and relate to them.
And you're also a minor in coaching as well?
Yes. And so that I had thought about going into sports psychology once I graduated with a Bachelor in Science in Psychology, and so thought a minor in coaching would help with that, but also just thought a minor in coaching would help with eventually coaching later in life in soccer.
What was college life like over there? Was it fun? Or did you find it a bit different?
I think, again, if I was someone that actually liked to party and drink, I would have probably enjoyed it a lot more.
Yeah.
I think my brother always wanted to go over there because he enjoyed the party scene more than I did. One of my brothers, actually probably both of my brothers, to be honest. And I was that person that, on a Saturday night, instead of going out to college parties, I was in my room doing homework.
Yeah.
And especially because being a student athlete, you would leave on a Thursday and you wouldn't get back until a Sunday night. So there was the expectation that when you're on the bus going interstate that you're doing your homework while you're there. You get into whatever state you're in and you've got training Thursday night, training Friday morning, game Friday night, recovery Saturday morning. And it is full on, but you have obviously the resources to help you get through that. And so it's a very good opportunity, I think, to grow up as a person, would probably be my overall synopsis of college.
Now, during this period, it was looking to be some ups over there, playing over in the US, in the college system, professional setup over there. But they did go through a very tough time during that period. You suffered your second ACL.
Mm-hmm.
What was that moment like when you, being over there by yourself, your family's back home, you go through something that's serious like that
mm-hmm.
you're gained, that everything you know and the reason you're over there, you can't do anymore.
Yep.
What was that moment like for you to realise that?
Well, so for the first one I did 6 weeks after I got to America. And it's funny, before I did my first one of our teammates had done hers and she was from Iceland. And I said, if I ever do my ACL, I'll go back to Australia, because why would I want to do this rehab away from family, away from home? And then 6 weeks later, I did my first ACL and I actually was motivated to come back from it. I saw it as a challenge. I saw it as, this is an opportunity for me to come back fitter, stronger, smarter. And I was excited about the challenge. It made me appreciate things that I hated doing. It made me appreciate being able to walk and go to the toilet by myself. Small things that we don't appreciate until we can't do them.
Yep.
Same thing with running. I used to hate running and then I couldn't do it for 4 months and I was so excited when I could run again. But then my senior year, I had injuries pretty much every year that I was over there. So my second year, because I was trying to make up for what I'd lost with my ACL, within 2 months, or within probably not 2 months, probably a month of being back, I then got a stress fracture in my foot because I was training so much, trying to again make up for 10 and a half months that I was out with my ACL. So that was my second year. And then my third year, I sprained my ankle to the point where I needed to be in a cast. But then was able to play the majority of my junior season and then did pretty well. And then senior year, I had big hopes and dreams to have a really good senior year. Was in a relationship for the first time in probably 3 or 4 years. So I was excited about that. I just finished an internship, had received captaincy, which I had been wanting for a couple of years. So everything was looking really bright. And then sprained my ankle pretty early on, but nothing serious. Came back in 2 weeks' time. And I remember my trainer taping my ankle that morning and saying, no injuries today.
Yeah.
And I don't know why, but immediately my mind thought, no ACL. And then 17 minutes into the game and pop went my other ACL. And anyone who's done their ACL will know what that pop is. And I immediately at that moment just went numb. It was like my brain switched off and said, nope, Nicole, you can't handle this. You can't emotionally get through this right now. So I became apathetic, indifferent. I was actually quite giddy. So people would probably speak to me and they're like, why does Nicole seem so happy? But what I was feeling internally was I felt nothing. I was basically dead inside. But I was able to exercise. So I made a decision that I was going to try and play without an ACL, which a few people have done. So I did rehab for about 6 weeks, was in the gym every single day trying to get strong. And I then started doing some functional movement, but my knee was shifting. So it was like tearing my ACL without the pop, which was it was traumatic in the sense that, you expect to hear that pop and it doesn't, but your knee literally shifted, which was not an enjoyable experience. was able to play without an ACL, just not obviously how I used to be able to play. But that way I was able to finish college somewhat on my terms. But we made it to the grand final, which was in Florida. It was I think 12 or 13 hour bus drive. We lost in the grand final for the conference championship. And then I think it was 15 hours later, I was under the knife having surgery again. And so that was a pretty quick turnaround. And it was sort of after surgeries when things started to spiral out of control for me.
What were some of the things that started happening during that period for you personally?
So I think the biggest thing is that, you know, there's a lot of research that says that exercise can alleviate depressive symptoms. But what happens when you can't exercise? What happens when your exercise is your primary form of identity? What happens when your exercise is your coping mechanism? And all of a sudden you can't do all of that. To me, you're then not at risk of things like depression. And so for me, I went through a drug withdrawal when I couldn't exercise. You know, I wasn't getting the endorphin release from exercise. I wasn't getting the oxytocin from my teammates. I wasn't getting the serotonin from feeling valued, or the dopamine from sort of the challenge or the competitive nature of sport. And so you're literally going through a drug withdrawal. On top of that, you know, my family lived in another country. I hadn't been home for, at this point, I think it was 18 months. And that Christmas, I decided to stay in America because my partner had lost her mum early in that year, and I felt like I needed to be there for her during that time. But I forgot to take into account the fact that I probably needed to look after myself. So I was homesick. I was in my final sort of semester of school, so I wasn't being challenged intellectually. I'd reached out to friends, but my friends all seemed to be busy. And, you know, I said, hey, like, I'm really not doing well. Can we catch up for coffee? And they said, oh, you know, you'll get through this. You'll be okay. And then on top of that, because I wasn't getting any of those needs met from any of my other environments, I then put all of this pressure on my partner to sort of supply that, which is not healthy. And so our relationship became extremely toxic, and things sort of escalated a lot. And I found myself institutionalized for New Year's at the end of 2014. But even when I was institutionalized, I knew, I was like, you know, this is not my rock bottom. And I was right that rock bottom wouldn't happen until probably 6 weeks later.
Jeez. How did you manage to get out of that rock bottom?
So rock bottom was, I got to the point where I literally thought that things couldn't get better, and I felt like I had to just end my life. But I fortunately didn't. And a few things changed in my environment. So there's a saying that you can't heal in environments that make you sick. And so one of the things that happened after that point was my partner left me, which was probably one of the best things to happen, because then I was forced to get better for myself rather than for someone else. So it was more of a genuine improvement. I went to therapy twice a week. So I was in group therapy and also individual therapy. I found that group therapy helped probably more than individual therapy because of the connections that I made with other people going through similar things. I also had a cat, and crazy cat lady. But my cat and animal therapy helped a lot because it's that unconditional love. You know, every time that I came home from school or whatever it was, my cat was there waiting for me. I changed the environment where I was doing my rehab. So I found that doing rehab in the training room and around the soccer girls was too painful for me, because it kept serving as a reminder of everything that I had but no longer did. And so I had to then do rehab outside of campus and change my environment there, made some connections with people there as well. And so those things helped. And I had two really incredible people in my life who, no matter how much I tried to push them away, they still stuck around. One of those was my professor, and one of those was my Norwegian friend at the time. So,
you still keep in touch with both of them at this right now? Or?
One of them, yes. So my Norwegian friend, yes. But my professor, unfortunately, not.
With that situation, though, it is a tough one, and it's something that a lot of people probably go through. They have similar situations, but not many people get to talk about it as much, and not many people know about how to deal with that kind of thing. So if someone was listening and heard that your story can relate to it, what would you recommend to be able to deal with something like that and prevent it from or noticing the signs and preventing it from getting to rock bottom?
I think the biggest thing I've learned, I use the analogy from Inside Out. Not sure if you watched Inside Out, but it's one of my favorite kids' movies. And if you see Riley at the start of the movie, she only has 5 pillars to her personality, or islands to her personality. You know, there's Goofball Island, there's Honesty Island, friendship, whatever else. And what you see is that slowly each one of those islands, she loses connection to them. And she falls into what you could hypothesize is depression. But what ends up happening is later on in the movie, she ends up building all of these other connections. And so with her personality, she has, you know, boy band island or something like that, or Vampire Island or something like that. And so she's got all of these different pillars to her personality. And I guess from my experience, I was so dependent on these 5 areas of my life. So I had soccer, education, friends, partner, family. And I lost all of those except for my partner. Whereas now if I look at myself, like I have a lot more interest in my life. You know, my friends, I don't just have 2 friends. I've got different friendship groups. I can sort of touch base with multiple people at different times depending on what I need. And, you know, if something happened, heaven forbid something happened in soccer, you know, I've got coaching that I could fall back on, or I've got writing. I found that when I was really struggling, writing ended up being a massive coping mechanism for me because I was able to express everything that I was feeling without judgment. And even it was, honestly, I started a document of everything I wish I could say but can't. And I just poured everything out on there and, you know, have never shared it with anyone, which sometimes that can help. Sometimes it can make people feel worse. But I think it's about finding what works for people individually. But probably the biggest thing is connections to other people or other things. I think sometimes connection is the antidote to a lot of suffering that we experience today.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there because I can relate to some of those with situations I have. So it's incredible to see how you've come out of it. How you feel now looking back on it. Does it make you feel good? Because I know at the beginning, like with something that I've been through, I'll look back on it in the early stages of getting past it. And it was hard to look back on. But now, after a long distance, how's it feel to look back on those times?
I think at the start, I was definitely so angry about a lot that happened to me. And I think any time that we're still angry about something, it's because there's still something that we need to learn, that we're not able to let go of something, that the pain is there to remind us that there are lessons that we're still yet to learn. And I think now I would like to think that I'm at peace with things that had happened. I'm using sort of my experiences to help others avoid getting into a similar situation. And I think so much of what I went through is environment based. And so that's why so much of what my focus is not necessarily on the individual, but on the environment. You know, you can sit with an individual and they could be the mentally toughest individual that you've ever met in your life. But if you put them in a toxic environment, I can guarantee you they'll be affected by the toxic environment. So instead of focusing on the individual, focus on the environment, and you don't just help one person, you help the collective group that's in that environment. But I don't know if that really answered your question. Well,
it did answer it, I think, because you do look back on it on a different perspective now as well, which is a good thing. So hopefully that can help people. And you're now helping people. You did some time over there with the helplines and working in that. What other things do you do now to help people like with mental health and your public speaking and stuff?
So after I hit rock bottom, I felt compelled to share my story. I felt very fortunate that I never went through with ending my life. And so I felt like I needed to then advocate for people who were struggling in similar situations. I always wanted to write a book. I'm in the process of writing one, but haven't made much progress at the moment. But I worked as a crisis text line counsellor in the States for about 8 months, which is sort of like a suicide hotline, but a text line. Okay. And in order to become a counsellor, you had to go through a 6-week training program to become sort of certified, if you will. And little did I know that experience would then, I guess, fundamentally shape some of the things that I'm doing now. And I think it was probably the end of 2020, I had an idea of starting my own sort of business or workshop. I always thought that I needed to have a platform to have influence, but I think sometimes you don't need to have a platform. You just start where you are with what you have, sort of thing. So in 2020, I had this idea of starting a mentoring program at Salisbury Inter. And I thought, how amazing would it be if, we could train all of, say, the WNPL girls to have these basic skills where they could mentor a junior girl in the club. And it was less about sort of helping the junior kids and more about equipping adults with basic skills of how to support others. And so that's where sort of the idea of this workshop that I've designed came from, which is supporting others when they're struggling. So it's 2 by 2 hour training modules, which can be modified based on, time constraints and whatever else. I've done a bit of work at Westminster School, Scotch College, to different age groups, where I've tailored sort of the training to the time that we have and the age group. But sort of the first module is basically equipping individuals with basic skills of, well, how do you support someone who's struggling? One of the big things is validate whatever it is that they're feeling, take an active interest, actually ask questions. And then the second module is more mental health specific. So how do you risk assess someone who's suicidal? How do you support someone who has an eating disorder, and all those sorts of things? And I think, we have this idea that, if anyone has tried to see a psychologist recently, that there's typically a waiting list of, say, 6 months or so, which isn't really helpful if you're going through something, in this moment. And so for me, the sort of solution to that is, we don't need more psychologists. Well, we do, but we also need more doctors. We're always going to need more doctors, more psychologists. But imagine if every single time that you had a paper cut on your finger, or if you had a headache, you had to go see a doctor. Well, you'd never be able to go see a doctor because they'd be inundated with sort of trivial things that could be treated at home. And I feel like in society, because most people don't know how to support people when they have these sort of general struggles, they then get to the point where they're not treated when they're having these struggles, which then ends up having a crisis, which then you obviously do need someone like a psychologist. So to me, the solution is equipping everyone with basic skills of supporting others rather than just a few with specific skills.
Do you think that will help with coaches specifically, having those skills and helping juniors that are going through different things at different times?
Yeah, definitely. I think, coaches, teachers, people in those positions have a massive platform for influence, in the sense that sometimes as a kid you don't necessarily want to talk to your parents, and it's just, I think a lot of people can probably relate to it. It's got nothing to do with our parents, but sometimes it's just you don't want to talk to them, and that's where the opportunity for a coach to have that significant influence, to have those conversations, and it's about, well, how do you have those conversations when someone tells you something quite significant? How you respond is so important. And I think most people don't ask the questions because they're afraid of what the answer might be. They don't feel like they have the skills, which to me, it's a simple solution. Equip them with skills to have those sort of difficult conversations, or even just equipping them with skills to be human and saying, hey, wow, I can't imagine how difficult it is to be going through whatever it is right now. But I really don't know what to say, but I just know that would be really tough. And so it's acknowledging, hey, I'm human. I don't have answers for you, but yeah, wow, I have empathy for you that this situation is difficult.
Yep. It's, do you think it's going to get to a point where we may have more of this in the future?
I think so, yes. I think, in 10 years' time, and you're already seeing it with schools that, they've got well-being sectors within schools. And I think, in 10 years' time, things like this will probably be commonplace. It's obvious that at the moment there isn't the funding for it. But I think, in years to come, this will be something that'll be standard.
Yep.
And sort of my vision after being a crisis text line counsellor when I did the 6-week training program was, imagine if this could be part of a school curriculum. Imagine if every single student could be equipped with these basic skills. Imagine if every single kid or adult was taught how to resolve conflict. These basic skills that humans sort of lack. Imagine if we actually had specific training for that.
Yeah.
And what better way to do that than in school?
Well, let's talk. You're now talking about you do coaching at Inter, but before you got there, you left Kennesaw State University in the US, came back to Australia. What was the reasoning behind that? Was it to try and, did you want to move back to family, or trying to get into a professional career, hopefully?
Yeah, so after 6 years in the US, after my second ACL, I thought, I'll never play soccer again. But I was 21 at the time, and because it was my senior year in college, there wasn't that need for me to come back, so to speak. I had nothing to come back for. And so my rehab took a lot longer than my first one where, I had 3 years left of playing. But I got into coaching when I was in America, and I just felt like I wasn't done playing. Coaching just didn't satiate that playing or that feeling of playing in that way. And so I made a decision, I think in probably 2017, that I wanted to try and play professionally again. So at the start of 2017, made the decision to move back to Australia, wanted to try and play Adelaide United, which is something that I had wanted to do since I was a kid. But things just never aligned for me as a kid, always seemed to miss out. And then the year that I moved to America is when they promoted younger players, and things don't align for you. And so in 2017 was a train on for United, and then moved to Metro United in 2018. Was there for a year and then have been at Salisbury since.
How did you feel about the move coming back to Australia? Was it the perfect timing for yourself?
I think so. I think I was very angry after my collegiate years. I was very unhappy with my time in college. I felt like I was trying to sort of change the environment but couldn't. And it took me 4 years to realize that you can't change something that people don't see is broken. And so when it took me, we were in our final, I think, team meeting, and we were talking about values, and my team described themselves as being committed and hardworking, and all of these things, and a family. And I thought, what? Like, you guys are not committed. In my mind, commitment was, well, what are you doing outside of soccer? How are you eating? How are you sleeping? What are you doing for recovery? Whereas for them, commitment was showing up to practice every day. So their commitment was doing the bare minimum. And so in their mind, they were committed. In their mind, they were hardworking. But for me, that's not what commitment was. And so there was a bit of an incompatibility with the environment. And that's sort of a massive lesson that I've learnt, even in workplaces, that you can't change something unless people see that there's something wrong with it. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the environment or there's anything wrong with you. It's just that your values don't align. And I think, it took me 4 years and a lot of frustration to realize that. But it sort of helped me make decisions in workplaces coming back.
Well, now you found yourself, you're playing at Salisbury Inter here in the WNPL. Your time there, you've played with some incredible footballers, including Calder as well. She's an incredible footballer. We're lucky to have her in the WNPL. Hopefully she comes back to the league at some point. But what was it like playing with players like that in the local leagues?
It's pretty incredible, and I think sometimes you take it for granted, and it's not until you see Cote representing Chile in the national stage, and you're like, yeah, wow, like she's been my teammate for the past couple of years. Like, that's pretty insane. We have been very fortunate to have her in the WNPL, not just with what she can do on the field, but sort of the professionalism that she brings off the field too. She raises the standard of trainings and everything because of how her expectations of others and her aspirations to play at the next level.
And that period that you were there, you're still there now, but a couple of years ago you were the treble winners under Simon Catanzaro. What was that year like to be able to achieve something like that?
I've never really... Winning things has never been something that's been a goal of mine. I've always wanted to enjoy playing with teammates, but I'm not going to lie and say that it wasn't satisfying to win. Yeah. We went from not winning anything to then winning everything in 1 year, which was pretty unreal, and it was a dreamlike experience. It wasn't without its challenges. It wasn't a breezy run by any means, and West Adelaide definitely gave us a run for our money in the grand final. But I think some of Simon's coaching principles was really the key factor in us getting over the line in the grand final particularly.
What was it like having him as a coach? Was he a great coach?
He was. Some of the things that he was really good at was, he managed everyone's loads really well. And so he was aware that he had experienced players and he had younger players. The experienced players sometimes need to miss a training or two. And he was really good at that, really good at checking in on players. And I think his principles in that treble winning year were incredible, and the reason that we won, and they're principles that I've stolen and I've used in my 17s and my 15s when I coached them in 2021 as well, just because they make sense. And it's all about sort of effort and hard work, things that are always within your control, which, I'm a big sort of promoter of. You can't always control whether or not you make a mistake, but you can always control how you recover from it.
Now your new coach is Tony Scousey. You're into your new season under him. How are you feeling with the new coach and having him at the club?
I think it's exciting. I think as I get older, I'm looking at what I can learn from coaches from both a playing and coaching perspective. And so I was excited to have Tony on board just to learn from another experienced coach. Has obviously a very different coaching style than coaches that I've had in the past, as everyone does. Everyone is very unique in the way that they coach. But I really like the style of football that he's wanting us to play. I really like his approach towards the girls. And I'm excited for this year because of that.
Your co-captain alongside Chantel Ryder. Well, I've spoken to you in another episode in the preview to the WNPL, but you mentioned about she's your twin. What's that connection like with her as co-captains?
I don't even know. Everyone seems to get us confused, which, to be honest, it kind of is confusing on the field because we have, similar height, similar hair, similar structure. We play, I think, a similar brand of football too. And so I totally understand why people will get us confused on the field, especially commentating. Like, I apologize to everyone. I've tried to cut my hair, but then when I cut my hair, Chance cuts her hair. But it's so nice having a leader who compliments you. And I think I have never had someone that I've led with who sort of balances me out in a lot of things. And I think that, for us playing as centre backs together, what better combination do you want, sort of thing. But yeah, it's a privilege to be able to play alongside her.
Does everyone feed off that connection you two have?
I would say so, yes. Like, there were a couple of games last year where Chance was playing up front, and if we went up in the game, then Chance was dropped back to centre back, and you could see the rest of the team sort of settled, and they became, a lot calmer because there is that sort of understanding between each other that, any time that I go, then Chance has me covered, and vice versa. And, I've had a lot of coaches say that they don't like coming up against us, which is, a compliment to sort of the relationship that we have on the field and off the field too.
You only got probably a few more years in yourself for career-wise, do you believe? Or you reckon you got a longer period?
No, probably only a few more years. My body is taking a bit longer to recover than I would hope. But we'll see.
Well, you're coaching, you mentioned it earlier that you're coaching junior girls now at Inter as well while you're there. Is that where you want to head to? We've only got a couple of female coaches in the league at the moment. Treble winning coach at West Adelaide, Tracy Jenkins, and also Tian, the first women's coach at Adelaide City. She's in her first season. Are you looking towards heading in that direction?
Potentially, yes. I definitely think that I need a few more years experience probably coaching juniors. And I've also questioned my motivation towards coaching seniors. I asked this question a few weeks ago of what motivates someone to coach seniors over juniors. And I really enjoy being able to impact players. My favorite age group to coach is that 14-15 age group because, it's an awkward time. Kids are going through puberty. It's really uncomfortable. They're looking for that role model. And I really think that when you take an interest in these kids' lives, like it can be life-changing for them. And so I actually really enjoy coaching juniors for that perspective. And I don't know whether I'm that interested in coaching at the senior level. I say that now, and I will probably be coaching in a couple of years' time. But I'm enjoying coaching this age group. I struggle coaching younger kids just because they want to have fun, which is totally fine. I was a kid too, and you just want to play. But I really enjoy having an influence and hopefully a positive one on these kids.
Well, it looks like you will be, and hopefully we'll see you coaching in the future at some point, or somewhere. There's I'm sure there's many opportunities hopefully out there and to come with the Women's World Cup here now. we never know what's going to happen with women's football in the future as well.
Yes, very true. And maybe I'll be coaching the kids that I'm coaching now at the Premier League level in a couple of years' time. Who knows?
You never know. Hopefully, then you can follow them all the way up. There you
Yes.
go. It's been a pleasure chatting with you, Nicole. I've really enjoyed your story and hearing the real side of footballers as well. I've shared a lot of these stories with footballers that have gone through tough moments, and I think, and I've seen this in my personal life as well, that you go through certain stages in your career or work life or even home life, and you feel like you're alone. But there's people out there, because you don't see the stories out there of someone going through the exact same. You see them at their peak of their career, and you're in your career and you think you're struggling, but you don't realise they went through exactly the same or maybe worse to get through. So being able to share yours, hopefully it helps someone else that's going through ACL, maybe not as bad as you, but in a similar situation, and maybe able to help for them to deal with it a bit better, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you hit the nail on the head there, that what we see when it comes to athletes is, we see the success stories that we don't, how often do you hear about the people that never made it? When was the last time that you read a book about someone who wanted to play at the top level and didn't make it? I mean, it probably wouldn't sell, would it? But I think that sometimes is a lot more relatable to people, that how many people, had a dream job and they never ended up in their dream job, but they're doing something else that they really enjoy. And I think, that's part of life, is very rarely do things go according to plan, and you have to be able to adapt. And it's figuring out who you are when that primary sense of identity, so your sport, well, when that's taken away from you, who are you then? What can you still contribute even when you're not able to do the thing that you really thought you were able to do? And I think, we spoke about this before, how technology probably has a lot to answer for in that regards, that we hear or we see the success stories on Instagram and whatever else, and you don't see the days when people want to quit. The amount of times that I've wanted to quit in my career. In 2018, after I got cut from United, I was done. I was ready to quit. And it wasn't until Tracy Jenkins called me up and she said, Nicole, I'm just touching base to see, how you are and whether you're thinking about doing anything stupid like quitting soccer altogether. And I just started bawling my eyes out, because I was like, yeah, I do want to quit, I've wanted to play at this elite level for most of my life, and I still can't achieve that goal. And, we want to believe that if you work hard, you can achieve anything that you want in life. But sometimes things just don't align for you, There's an analogy that I give kids in some of the talks is there's this peach, right? There's a peach analogy that you could be the juiciest, the sweetest peach in the whole entire world. And there will be people who are allergic to peaches, or there will be people who just don't like peaches. And that has nothing to do with you or anything that you offer, that sometimes you're just not compatible for an environment. And I think trying to find an environment where you are valued, where you are appreciated, I think that is probably the most important thing for, things like your mental health and feeling okay in life.
I think one thing I found that's good is not just having that one goal that if you can't make it, you get disappointed. Set multiple goals. And I think if you have things, little ones here and there, that helps as well. Keeps you motivated, keeps you going.
Definitely. And I think sometimes the pain or the disappointment is there to help you later in life that you don't even know. Even with, I think about how many injuries I've been through, and as frustrating and as devastating as they are, I can now help kids that I'm coaching with their rehab, because I've had so much experience with it that I'm, can say, hey, look, you're not just jumping straight back into training. You have to do rehab before you can actually train. And I think, well, I wouldn't have known this knowledge unless I went through what I did. And, even checking in on teammates and with their ACLs and checking in on how they are, not how's your knee, which is a common question that people get asked is, oh, how's your knee doing? It's like, oh, yeah, like the knee's fine, but ask me how I'm doing, because I'm really struggling, And I think sometimes people forget that. They forget to treat the human part first, and they focus more on the injury.
Well, you put that well, and I've really enjoyed getting the insight to all this. It's been intriguing. I hope everyone else has enjoyed it as well. But got to end it off with the kicking it questions. Questions I ask all my guests, and it's a light way to end it. And I know there's you might have already thought about it. I don't know. No, you haven't. That's good. That makes it even better. So let's get straight into it then.
More authentic that way, right?
That's it. Right on the spot. So the first one is, which footballer would you love to kick it with on the park? Anyone in the world, if you had the chance. We've done it with Sam Kerr already, so it's a bit hard.
Yeah, that is true.
Maybe Sam Kerr now might be a little bit different to Sam Kerr back then. But
Yeah,
I don't want to
very true.
influence. I don't want to influence your decision in that one.
I would say I actually really like the way that Miedema plays, to be honest. But she also has just done her ACL at the moment. And I think the fact that she's Dutch, my Oma was Dutch, or is Dutch, sorry. And so there's that Dutch sort of association where I think that she would just be an awesome forward or attacking midfielder to play alongside.
So so that's your choice for.
Yep.
Beautiful. And what about name 2 people, someone internationally, someone locally that you would love to kick it with on a Saturday night, watch some football, have a few drinks if you're not a big drinker, but just a couple coffees. There you go.
Not soccer related at all, but I've always wanted to meet. There's 2 people internationally that I've wanted to meet: Simon Sinek and Johan Hari.
Okay.
2 people that have significantly influenced my life that I would love to sit down and have a coffee with, not a beer or a drink or anything. But and I've also really wanted to meet Emma Watson for no other reason than I just think that she would be an incredible human being. And then in Australia, don't know, to be honest.
You can choose Chantel if you want.
My twin, yeah. Right, let's say Chance.
All right, that'll be fun. Well, there you go. Thank you so much for sharing your story once again, and it's been a pleasure to hear it, and it's very inspiring to see where you've gotten to, and hopefully you can help the future generation with kids through your coaching.
Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for putting on this incredible show.
If you're interested in learning more about Nicole's training or public speaking services, make sure you head to nicolecalder.com/services. That was Salisbury Inter's Nicole Calder. Make sure you subscribe to Kicking It Local wherever you get your podcasts so you can get a taste of the SA football community. Plus, follow Kicking It Local SA on Instagram and Twitter so you don't miss any of the action. See you soon!